When Elena Blackwood handed the keys of her $300,000 Ferrari to Marcus Reeves, the night janitor with a dying daughter, she never expected it would shatter the ice fortress around her heart forever. The single gesture that began as a reckless dare became the catalyst that would transform two broken lives, leaving the ruthless CEO sobbing alone in her penthouse as she watched the evening news. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Elena Blackwood's heels clicked against the polished marble floor of Blackwood Industries headquarters, the sound echoing through the empty corridor like a metronome counting down the late hour. The cleaning staff had already gone home, all except one. The beam of her flashlight caught the solitary figure at the end of the hall, the blue uniform a stark contrast against the pristine white walls. "You're here late," Elena said, her voice cutting through the silence. The janitor startled, nearly dropping his mop. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by a careful neutrality that came from years of making himself invisible to the executives whose spaces he maintained. "Just finishing up, Miss Blackwood," he replied, resuming his methodical mopping. "Spill in the conference room. Thought I'd take care of it before morning." Elena nodded, studying him. Marcus Reeves, single father, night shift janitor for 3 years. The kind of employee who existed in the periphery of her world, essential yet unseen. She knew his name only because HR had recently flagged his file excessive absences. Tardiness, a pattern that suggested impending termination. "Your daughter? How old is she now?" Elena asked, surprising herself with the question. Marcus looked up, genuine surprise flashing across his weathered face. "Lily? She's 8. 8. The same age Elena's sister had been when she'd gotten sick." The memory surfaced unbidden: hospital rooms, the antiseptic smell, her parents' hushed voices discussing treatments they couldn't afford. "You've been missing shifts," Elena said, the words more statement than accusation. Marcus's shoulders tensed. "Ms. Blackwood, I can explain. I've seen the reports," she interrupted, her tone businesslike. 3 missed shifts in the past month, 5 incidents of tardiness." He stood straighter, dignity replacing deference. "My daughter's been sick. She's at St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The treatments..." He stopped himself as if remembering his place. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Something in his voice, in the quiet desperation of a parent fighting for their child, resonated with Elena. She thought of her own father, how he'd worked himself to exhaustion trying to save her sister. How different things might have been if someone had just offered them a helping hand. "What's wrong with her?" Elena asked, her voice softer now. Marcus hesitated, clearly surprised by her interest. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The doctors say her chances are good, but the treatments are ... rough. And the bills ... single quotes," he trailed off, turning back to his mop as if to hide the emotion in his eyes. Elena's chest tightened. 20 years later, and the disease that had taken her sister was still destroying families, still forcing parents to choose between being there for their sick child and keeping the job that paid for treatment. "Do you drive to the hospital from here?" she asked suddenly. "Yes, ma'am. Bus. Actually, my car broke down last month." Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out her keys. The Ferrari logo caught the overhead light, gleaming like a small red star against her palm. "Take it," she said, extending her hand. Marcus stared at the keys, confusion etched across his face. "I don't understand. My car. The red Ferrari in the executive parking spot. Take it for the day tomorrow. I won't need it." His confusion deepened to disbelief. "Ms. Blackwood, I can't consider it a test drive," Elena said, the impulsive idea taking shape as she spoke. "I've been considering implementing a program, a day of luxury for outstanding employees. You'd be helping me evaluate the concept." It was a transparent lie, and from the look on his face, Marcus knew it. But he also recognized the rare gift being offered, not just the car, but the dignity of pretending this was something he'd earned rather than charity he needed. "Why?" he asked simply. Elena thought about telling him the truth about her sister, about the helplessness she'd felt watching her family crumble under the weight of medical bills and grief, about how the empire she'd built still couldn't fill the void that loss had left. Instead, she said, "Because sometimes we all need a day that breaks the pattern." She placed the keys in his hand, closing his fingers around them. "Just bring it back in one piece." The next morning, Elena arrived at work in her rarely used backup car, wondering if she'd made a mistake. Lending her $300,000 Ferrari to a janitor had seemed profound at midnight. In the harsh light of day, it felt reckless. Her assistant's wide-eyed stare as she walked in without her signature car confirmed it. "Your Ferrari," her assistant began, "is being used for a company initiative," Elena finished smoothly. "Speaking of which, I need you to clear my afternoon schedule and find out everything you can about an employee named Marcus Reeves." By noon, a folder sat on her desk containing Marcus's entire life story. Widowed 3 years ago when his wife died in childbirth with their second child who hadn't survived either. A daughter diagnosed with leukemia 6 months ago. Medical bills mounting. Multiple jobs, including weekend shifts at a convenience store. Impeccable performance reviews until his daughter's diagnosis. Elena closed the folder, a strange hollowness in her chest. She'd expected her impulsive generosity to ease some of the guilt she carried, the survivor's guilt of the sister who had lived, who had inherited the family business while Sarah's potential had been buried in a small white coffin. Instead, Marcus's story only amplified it. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for your kindness. Your car is safe. Marcus. Elena stared at the message, an odd disappointment settling over her. She'd given him her Ferrari, the ultimate symbol of wealth and freedom, and all he'd done was drive it to work. Part of her had hoped he'd use it for something meaningful, something that would justify her recklessness. She tapped out a reply before she could reconsider. A Ferrari is meant to be enjoyed. Just don't waste it on a commute. 3 dots appeared, disappeared again. Finally, what would you suggest? Elena smiled. A genuine smile that felt foreign on her face. Surprised me. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, the momentary connection with Marcus fading beneath the weight of quarterly projections and market analyses. By the time she left the office, the Ferrari was just another impulsive decision in a life carefully structured to avoid precisely such lapses in judgment. Her driver took her home, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows of her town car. She found herself wondering what Marcus had done with her dare. Had he taken a joyride, picked up his daughter for a spin around town, shown off to friend? It wasn't until she was home, nursing a glass of wine and reviewing contracts, that her phone buzzed again. Turn on Channel 7 News. The message read. Frowning, Elena reached for her remote. The local news was in the middle of their human interest segment, the chipper anchor's voice filling her silent penthouse. Heartwarming scene at St. Mary's Children's Hospital today, when an anonymous donor arrived in a luxury sports car filled with toys and gifts for the pediatric oncology ward. Hospital staff say the mysterious benefactor spent the afternoon visiting with young patients, bringing a much-needed day of joy and excitement. The camera cut to footage of a gleaming red Ferrari parked outside the hospital entrance, its trunk open and overflowing with wrapped packages. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable in his blue uniform, stood Marcus, helping a nurse unload the gifts. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes suddenly burning. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, forgotten. Her phone buzzed again. My daughter said it was the best day ever. Not because of the toys, but because all the kids forgot they were sick for a little while. They just felt special instead. The camera panned to show children in hospital gowns gathered around the Ferrari, their small faces alight with wonder as they peeked inside the luxury car. One little girl, thin, pale, with a colorful scarf wrapped around her head, sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel as she pretended to race down an imaginary highway. Lily. It had to be. Something broke inside Elena, then a wall she'd carefully constructed years ago, brick by brick, to contain the grief and guilt and rage at a world that took 8-year-old girls and left their families in ruins. Another text. Hope I didn't overstep. The car's back in your spot, with a full tank. Thank you for making a difference today. Elena stared at the message through blurred vision, the carefully cultivated image of the Ice Queen CEO dissolving as tears tracked silently down her cheeks. Marcus hadn't used her car for himself. He hadn't shown off or taken a joyride or done any of the self-indulgent things she might have done in his position. Instead, he'd created a moment of magic for children fighting the same battle her sister had lost, children like his daughter, like Sarah. He'd turned an act of impulsive charity into something immeasurably more valuable. For the first time in 20 years, Elena felt the weight of her grief shift just slightly, making room for something that felt dangerously like hope. Elena awoke the next morning with puffy eyes and a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The news segment had replayed in her dreams all night those children's faces, the wonder in their eyes, the simplicity of joy that Marcus had created with nothing but borrowed luxury and genuine compassion. She reached for her phone, scrolling back to his last message. Thank you for making a difference today. Not thanks for the car or thanks for the opportunity. He'd thanked her for making a difference as if she'd done anything but hand over a key. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your 8:30's here, Miss Blackwood. Elena sighed, setting down the phone. Send them in. The day proceeded as days always did at Blackwood Industries, meetings blending into conference calls. Decisions made and unmade, millions moved with the stroke of a pen. Yet Elena found herself distracted, her thoughts drifting to St. Mary's Children's Hospital and a janitor who had shown more compassion in one afternoon than she had in 20 years of wealth and power. During a break between meetings, she called her assistant. Get me the contact information for the director of St. Mary's Children's Hospital and clear my afternoon schedule. 2 hours later, Elena sat across from Dr. Johanna Reynolds, the hospital's director, in a small, cluttered office that smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic. I appreciate you seeing me on such short notice, Elena began. Dr. Reynolds smiled, though the expression didn't quite reach her tired eyes. When the CEO of Blackwood Industries requests a meeting, we make time. Though I admit, I'm curious about your sudden interest in our little hospital. Elena hesitated, unaccustomed to the direct approach. In her world, people danced around intentions, couched demands and pleasantries. Dr. Reynolds clearly had no time for such game. I saw your hospital on the news last night. The story about the Ferrari filled with toys. Understanding dawned on the doctor's face. Yes, our mysterious benefactor. The children haven't stopped talking about it, especially Lily Reeves. It was the first time she's smiled in weeks. Lily, Elena repeated softly. She's the daughter of one of my employees, Dr. Reynolds nodded. Marcus is a good man, works himself to the bone for that girl. She leaned back in her chair, studying Elena. But I suspect you didn't come here to discuss your janitor. No, Elena agreed. I came to learn more about your pediatric oncology program, what you need, how I might help. The doctor's expression softened slightly. That's a broad question, Ms. Blackwood. We need everything better equipment, more staff, expanded facilities. She gestured around her cramped office. As you can see, luxury isn't in our budget. And the families? What do they need? Dr. Reynolds paused, seeming to weigh her words carefully. Most of our patients come from low-income backgrounds. Their parents lose jobs because they can't maintain regular hours while caring for a sick child. Insurance, if they have it, covers only a fraction of the cost. They need financial assistance, transportation, childcare for siblings, ... Single quotes, she trailed off, then fixed Elena with a penetrating gaze. They need miracles, Miss Blackwood, and those are in short supply. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She thought of her own family's struggle, how her father had worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford the experimental treatment that might have saved Sarah, how her mother had aged a decade in the span of months, how their family had fractured under the weight of grief and financial ruin. What if, Elena said slowly, the idea forming as she spoke, I could help provide those miracles? Dr. Reynolds looked skeptical. We appreciate donations, of course. Not just a donation, Elena interrupted. A foundation. The Sarah Blackwood Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Fam. The name came to her with such clarity that it took her breath away. Comprehensive support for families fighting childhood cancer medical costs. Yes, but also living expenses, transportation, childcare, mental health services. Everything they need to focus on helping their child heal without losing everything else in the process. The doctor stared at her, clearly trying to determine if she was serious. That's ... ambitious. I'm an ambitious woman, Elena replied simply. Dr. Reynolds studied her for a long moment. Why now? Blackwood Industries has never shown interest in our hospital before. The question was fair, but the answer felt too personal to share with a stranger. Elena opted for a partial truth. Let's just say I was recently reminded of what matters. The doctor nodded slowly. Well, if you're serious, I'd be happy to help you understand what these families truly need. I'd like to see the ward, Elena said suddenly. Meet some of the children. Surprise flickered across Dr. Reynolds' face. Now, if possible. 20 minutes later, Elena found herself walking through the pediatric oncology wing, surrounded by walls painted in cheerful colors that couldn't quite mask the institutional feel of the place. Children in various stages of treatment sat in common areas playing games or rested in their rooms, attached to 4 poles and monitoring equipment. The contrast to the private Swiss clinic where Sarah had spent her final months was stark. Here, families crowded into small rooms, parents sleeping in uncomfortable chairs beside their children's bed. Resources were clearly stretched thin, nurses hurrying between too many patients, dated equipment humming and beeping. Yet there was warmth here too. Handmade cards and artwork decorated the walls. Staff greeted each child by name, sharing inside jokes and gentle encouragement. In one room, a volunteer read stories to a circle of attentive young faces. Most of our children are from the local area, Dr. Reynolds explained as they walked. Many have been with us for months. We become a kind of family. They rounded a corner and Elena stopped short. There, sitting at a small table drawing with intense concentration, was a thin girl with a bright yellow scarf wrapped around her head, Lily Reeves. As if sensing their presence, the child looked up, her face lit with recognition, not of Elena but of the doctor. Doctor, Joe, she called. Come see my picture. I'm drawing the red car that came yesterday. Dr. Reynolds smiled, approaching the table. Beautiful, Lily. You've captured it perfectly. Elena hung back, suddenly uncertain. On paper, in boardrooms, she was confidence personified. Here, faced with a child whose life hung in the balance, she felt woefully inadequate. Lily looked past the doctor, noticing Elena for the first time. Who are you? She asked with the direct curiosity only children can muster. Before Elena could respond, a familiar voice came from behind them. Ms. Blackwood? She turned to find Marcus frozen in the doorway, a vending machine, coffee in one hand, and bewilderment written across his face. He was dressed not in his custodial uniform, but in worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. The exhaustion of a parent who had spent too many nights in hospital chairs evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. Dad! Lily exclaimed. This lady came to see my drawing of the Ferrari. Marcus crossed the room, setting down his coffee and placing a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. Ms. Blackwood, I didn't expect to see you here. Elena straightened, falling back on corporate poise to mask her discomfort. Miss Reeves, I was just touring the facility with Dr. Reynolds. She's going to help our hospital, the doctor added, watching the interaction with interest. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve. Dad? Is she the one who sent the red car? Marcus hesitated, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. Yes, sweetheart. This is Ems Blackwood. She's my boss. The little girl's eyes widened. You own a Ferrari? Despite herself, Elena smiled. I do. It's the prettiest car in the whole world, Lily declared. All the kids gotta sit in it. Even Tyler is in isolation most of the time. She pushed her drawing across the table. I made this for the person who sent it. Is that you? Elena stepped forward, accepting the paper with hands that suddenly felt clumsy. The drawing was remarkably good for an 8-year-old, a red Ferrari surrounded by children in hospital gowns, all with giant smiles on their faces. Above the scene, in careful block letters, were the words, "Best day ever." Yes, Elena said, her throat tightening. That was me. Single quotes. Lily beamed. Then this is for you, to say thank you for making everyone so happy. Elena looked from the drawing to the child's radiant face, then to Marcus, who watched them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you, Lily. It's beautiful, Dad said. Sometimes angels don't have wings. They have Ferraris, Lily continued, oblivious to the adult's discomfort. Are you an angel, Ms. Blackwood? The question hit Elena like a physical blow. An angel? She, who had spent 2 decades building an empire on cutthroat deals and calculated risks? She, who had deliberately sealed herself off from the very emotions now threatening to overwhelm her? No, she managed. I'm just someone who lent your dad a car. Well, I think you're an angel, Lily insisted with the absolute certainty of childhood. And I'm going to get better so I can ride in your Ferrari again someday. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. The last remnant of the wall she'd built around her heart the day they'd buried Sarah in the ground. She looked at Marcus, finding his eyes already on her, filled with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something that looked almost like understanding. I should go, Elena said abruptly, unable to bear the weight of their gazes any longer. She carefully folded Lily's drawing and placed it in her purse. Dr. Reynolds, thank you for the tour, Mr. Reeves. I'll see you at work. She turned to leave, her composure fracturing with each step. Behind her, she heard Lily ask, Dad, why does the angel look sad? Elena made it to her car before the tears came, not the quiet, dignified tears of the previous night, but racking sobs that bent her double in the privacy of her luxury sedan. Her driver, trained to ignore the emotions of his powerful passengers, pretended not to notice. For 20 years, Elena had run from her grief, bearing it beneath ambition and achievement. Now, confronted with Lily's innocent question, are you an angel? And the stark reality of families fighting the same battle her own had lost, she could run no longer. When the tears finally subsided, Elena sat up straight, wiped her eyes, and made a decision. The Sarah Blackwood Foundation wouldn't just be a charitable tax write-off, it would be her sister's legacy and perhaps her own redemption. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to Marcus. Your daughter called me an angel. I'm not, but maybe with your help I could learn to be. Marcus stared at his phone long after the hospital corridor had emptied. Elena's message glowing on the screen. Your daughter called me an angel. Not, but maybe with your help I could learn to be. What did you say to that? Especially when it came from Elena Blackwood, the notorious ice queen of the corporate world. Ruthless business tactics had made headlines almost as often as her incredible success. The woman who could make seasoned executives quake with a single raised eyebrow was asking for his help. He glanced back at Lily, who had returned to her drawing, humming softly to herself. The Ferrari visit had energized her in a way weeks of treatment hadn't managed. Her doctors had noticed too, her vitals stronger, her appetite improved. Marcus typed, deleted, and retyped his response several times before settling on, you don't need to learn anything. You just need to remember what you already know. He hit send before he could second guess himself, then tucked the phone away and returned to his daughter's side. Across town, Elena sat in her penthouse office, staring at Marcus's response. Remember what she already knew? What did that even mean? She hadn't known compassion, not really. Not since Sarah died and her father had retreated into work, her mother into grief, leaving 14-year-old Elena to build her defenses brick by brick, year by year. Her phone rang. Reynolds, Ms. Blackwood, I've been thinking about your foundation proposal. The doctor began without preamble. If you're serious, I'd like to introduce you to some people who could help structure it effectively. Elena straightened. I'm serious. Good. I've scheduled a meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pediatric oncology specialists, social workers, and Dr. Reynolds paused. A few of our patient families who've agreed to share their experiences. Elena hesitated. The families... Will Marcus Reeves be there? I've invited him. Yes. He's one of our parent advocates, helps new families navigate the system. Is that a problem? No, Elena said quickly. No problem at all. The next day, Elena arrived at St. Mary's 15 minutes early, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary but felt like armor as she entered the hospital's conference room. She needed every bit of that protection when she saw Marcus already there helping arrange chairs in a circle rather than the boardroom style she was accustomed to. He nodded in greeting, professional but not cold. Miss Black, Mr. Reeves, she returned. Then, remembering their text exchange, added softly, thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it, he replied, something unreadable in his expression. This could change lives. Before she could respond, Dr. Reynolds arrived with a stream of people, doctors in white coats, social workers with binders of information, and 3 sets of parents, their faces bearing the unmistakable weariness of the long-term caregiver. The meeting began with clinical presentations, statistics on childhood cancer rates, treatment costs, success ratio. Elena absorbed it all with the same sharp focus she brought to acquisition meetings, asking pointed questions about gaps in care and systemic failures. Then came the parent stories. A mother described quitting her job to care for her son, only to lose their health insurance. A father spoke of driving 3 hours each way for treatments because the specialists were too far from home. A couple detailed the bankruptcy they'd filed after their daughter's 3rd round of chemotherapy. Despite both working full-time, through it all, Marcus sat quietly, his presence a steady anchor in a sea of heartbreak. When his turn came, he spoke not of hardship, but of community. The worst part isn't the bills, Though those are crushing, he said, his deep voice filling the room. It's the isolation, the feeling that you're fighting this battle alone. What these families need most, what Lily and I needed most, was to know we weren't invisible, that someone saw us struggling and reached out a hand. His eyes met Elena's across the circle. Sometimes that help comes from unexpected places. The meeting concluded with practical next steps paperwork to file for nonprofit status, potential board members to approach, fundraising strategies to consider. Elena took detailed notes, her mind already architecting the foundation structure with the same precision she'd used to build her company. As the room emptied, Elena found herself alone with Marcus, both gathering their things in a silence that felt charged with unspoken words. "I can't figure you out," she finally said. Marcus looked up, surprised. "What do you mean? You should hate me. I'm the embodiment of everything wrong with the system that's failing your daughter. Corporate greed, wealth inequality." She gestured to her designer suit. "I spend more on clothes than you make in a month." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "If you were just a rich woman with a guilty conscience, maybe I would," he admitted. "But you're not, are you? There's something else driving this." Elena turned away, busying herself with her briefcase clasp. "We should schedule another meeting to discuss foundation structure. My assistant can." "It was someone in your family, wasn't it?" Marcus interrupted gently. "You mentioned Sarah, the foundation name." Elena's hands stilled. 20 years of practiced composure threatened to crumble under the weight of his perception. "My sister," she said finally, her voice barely audible, "as she was 8, like Lily." Marcus nodded, no pity in his expression, just quiet understanding. "That's what I meant in my text. You don't need to learn how to care. You already know. You've just been running from it for a very long time." Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from her driver. An urgent matter at the office required her attention. "I have to go," she said, grateful for the escape. "But I'd like your input on the foundation structure. Would you... would you be willing to meet again? Perhaps somewhere less formal." The invitation surprised them both. Marcus considered it, then nodded. "Lily has treatment tomorrow afternoon. I'll be at the hospital all day." "I'll come to you," Elena said, making a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. "And Marcus, bring your ideas. All of them. If we're going to do this, let's do it right." The next afternoon found Elena once again navigating the colorful corridors of St. Mary's pediatric wing, this time with a purpose beyond curiosity. She carried a sleek laptop and a folder of preliminary foundation documents, along with something tucked under her arm wrapped in simple blue paper. She found Marcus in the family lounge, his head bent over a well-worn notebook, scribbling ideas with the intense focus of a man used to making every moment count. He looked up as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "You came," he said, as if he'd half expected her to send an assistant in her place. "I said I would." Elena sat beside him, arranging her materials on the small table. "How's Lily today?" "Tough day. The new treatment protocol is ... intense." He rubbed his eyes, and Elena noticed the shadows beneath them had deepened. "But she's a fighter, like her father," Elena observed quietly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, more like her mother. "Rachel never backed down from anything." His expression softened with memory. "She would have liked you, I think." The unexpected compliment caught Elena off guard. "I doubt that. Most people find me ... difficult." Rachel appreciated honesty over pleasantries. "And you, Ms. Blackwood, are nothing if not honest." Elena felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. "Elena," she corrected. "If we're going to build this foundation together, you should call me Elena." Marcus nodded, accepting the shift between them. "Elena, then. I've been thinking about what the foundation could be." He pushed his notebook toward her, revealing pages of careful notes and diagrams. "Not just financial assistance, though that's critical, but a complete support system." For the next hour, they bent their heads together over their combined notes. Two people from vastly different worlds finding common ground in a shared vision. Marcus's practical wisdom complemented Elena's strategic thinking. Where she saw systemic solutions, he saw individual. Together, they began mapping something revolutionary foundation that would address not just medical costs, but the entire ecosystem of care. Transportation vouchers, Marcus suggested. An in-house legal team to fight insurance denials, Elena countered. Child care for siblings, career counseling for parents forced to leave jobs, mental health support, research funding for less profitable treatments. The list grew, their excitement building with each edition. For the first time since Sarah's death, Elena felt her wealth and power could serve a purpose beyond accumulation and control. For the first time in years, Marcus felt hope beyond Lily's individual battle, hope that future families might not face the same crushing isolation. As their planning wound down, a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Reeves, Lily's asking for you. She's finished her treatment." Marcus stood immediately. "I should go." Elena gathered her papers. "Of course. We can continue this another time. Would you ... single quotes." Marcus hesitated. "Would you like to come say hello? She's been talking about you." About the Ferrari angel, Elena felt her carefully constructed world tilt on its axis. In boardrooms and business deals, she was confident and commanding, but the prospect of facing a sick child who somehow saw her as an angel terrified her more than any hostile takeover. Yet she found herself nodding. "I'd like that. And I brought something for her." Single quotes. She indicated the blue package under her arm. "Lily's Lily's room was dimly lit, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. The little girl lay curled on her side, her yellow scarf slightly askew, revealing patches where hair had fallen out, and 4 poles stood sentinel beside her bed, its bags and tubing a stark reminder of the battle raging inside her small body. She looked up as they entered, her face pale but her eyes brightening at the sight of her father. "Dad, I did it!" No crying this time. Marcus crossed to her bed, brushing a gentle kiss on her forehead. "That's my brave girl. Look who came to see you." Lily's gaze shifted to Elena and her smile widened. The Ferrari angel. Elena approached the bed cautiously, the package clutched in suddenly nervous hands. "Hello, Lily. I heard you were having a tough day, so I brought you something." She held out the package. Lily took it with eager fingers, tearing away the paper to reveal a leather-bound sketchbook and a professional set of drawing pencils. "Dad said you're an artist," Elena explained. "I thought you might like something special to draw with." Lily ran her fingers over the smooth leather cover, her expression reverent. "It's beautiful. Thank you." She looked up at Elena with complete trust. "Will you sit with me while I draw? I want to show you how the Ferrari looked when all the kids were inside it." Elena glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragement. "I'd be honored," she said, settling carefully into the chair beside Lily's bed. As the little girl began to sketch, her small hand moving with surprising skill across the page, Elena felt something shift inside her, another brick falling from the wall around her heart. She looked up to find Marcus watching them both, his expression unreadable. In that moment, in the quiet of a hospital room with a janitor and his daughter, Elena Blackwood was farther from the boardroom than she'd been in 20 years. And strangely, it felt like coming home. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Elena divided her time between running Blackwood Industries and laying the groundwork for the Sarah Blackwood Foundation. Her executive team watched in bewilderment as their notoriously work-obsessed CEO began leaving the office at reasonable hours and blocking off entire afternoons for foundation business. What they didn't see were the hours Elena spent at St. Mary's, sitting beside Lily's bed while Marcus attended to his growing responsibilities as the Foundation's first official employee. Elena had insisted on hiring him as the Director of Family Advocacy, with a salary generous enough that he could quit both his janitorial position and his weekend convenience store job. "I can't accept this," Marcus had protested when she'd presented the offer. "It's too much." "It's not charity," Elena had replied firmly. "It's recognizing expertise. You understand these families' needs better than any consultant I could hire. The foundation needs you, Marcus." What she didn't say, couldn't say, was that she needed him too. His grounded perspective and unwavering moral compass had become her North Star in navigating this unfamiliar terrain of genuine human connection. Today, Elena sat in Lily's hospital room, laptop balanced on her knees as she finalized the Foundation's website design while Lily napped. The girl's latest round of treatment had been particularly brutal, leaving her exhausted but, according to her doctors, showing promising results. Elena looked up as Marcus entered, his face drawn with fatigue but his eyes bright with purpose. "The board approvals came through," he said quietly, mindful of his sleeping daughter. "We're officially incorporated. The Sarah Blackwood Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Families exists." Elena closed her laptop, a sense of accomplishment warming her chest. "That's excellent news. And the applications? The review committee is set. We can start accepting families next week." He hesitated. "There's something else, Doctor. Reynolds wants us to present at the Children's Oncology Conference next month. Share our model with other hospitals." Elena nodded, already mentally rearranging her schedule. "I'll have my team prepare a presentation package, actually." Marcus interrupted gently. "She specifically wants us both to present, the CEO and the janitor." Her words, not mine. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Effective optics, but genuine ones," Marcus pointed out. "That's what makes this foundation different. It's not just wealthy people deciding what poor people. It's collaboration across experience." Elena studied him, still marveling at how easily he cut through corporate jargon to the heart of matters. "You're right, of course. We'll do it together." A small sound from the bed drew their attention. Lily was awake, watching them with tired eyes. "Is the foundation real now?" she asked, her voice slightly raspy. Marcus moved to her bedside, smoothing back the colorful scarf covering her head. "It sure is, sweetheart. Just like we talked about." Lily smiled, turning her gaze to Elena. "So you can help other kids like me? And their moms and dads won't have to work 3 jobs like Dad did?" Elena's throat tightened. In all their planning sessions, she'd approached the foundation as a strategic challenge, identifying gaps, allocating resources, measuring outcomes. But Lily, with her simple question, had distilled it to its essence: helping families like hers. "That's exactly right," Elena replied. "No parent should have to choose between being with their child and paying for treatment." Lily nodded, satisfied. "Good." She reached for the sketchbook Elena had given her, now half filled with remarkably detailed drawing. "I made something for the foundation." She carefully tore out a page and handed it to Elena. The drawing showed a red Ferrari, but unlike her earlier work, this one had been transformed, sprouting angel wings from its sleek body, with a halo hovering above. "The Ferrari angel," Lily explained seriously, "for your logo." Elena stared at the drawing, touched beyond words. She looked at Marcus, who was watching his daughter with unmistakable pride. "It's perfect," Elena said, her voice hushed with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." Single quotes later, As they walked through the hospital corridor toward the parking lot, Marcus broached a subject he'd been avoiding. The foundation is gaining attention, he said. The media is starting to ask questions about your involvement. Elena nodded. She'd anticipated this. My PR team can handle it. That's just it, Marcus said, stopping to face her. They're asking about your personal connection. Why the Sarah Blackwood Foundation? Who was Sarah? Elena felt the familiar tightening in her chest that came whenever she thought about discussing her sister publicly. For 20 years, Sarah had been her private grief, a wound too tender to expose to the world's scrutiny. I don't discuss my family with the media, she said stiffly. Marcus regarded her with gentle understanding. I know. And you don't have to, but Elena, your story, Sarah's story, could help other families feel less alone, the way you helped me and Lily feel less alone. Before she could respond, her phone rang, the special tone she'd assigned to her executive assistant, signaling an urgent matter. Elena answered, listened briefly, then ended the call with a terse acknowledgement. I have to go, she said, already shifting mental gears back to CEO mode. Crisis at the Tokyo office. Marcus nodded, accustomed now to the dual world she inhabited. We'll talk later. Elena hesitated, then reached out to briefly touch his arm, gesture of connection still new and somewhat awkward for her. Yes, and Marcus, I'll think about what you said. The Tokyo crisis kept Elena at the office until well past midnight, dealing with a manufacturing defect that threatened to derail a major product launch. By the time she finally returned to her penthouse, she was exhausted, her mind still spinning with problem-solving strategies and damage control protocols. She kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine, carrying it to the wall of windows that overlooked the city. The lights below glittered like earthbound stars, a view that had once reinforced her sense of being above it all, separate, untouchable. Now it just made her feel lonely. Without conscious decision, she found herself walking to her home office, to the locked drawer she hadn't opened in years. Inside was a slim photo album, its cover faded with age. Lena carried it to her sofa, curled her legs beneath her, and opened it with trembling fingers. Sarah smiled up at her from the first page. Gap-toothed, freckle-faced, and vibrantly alive, 8 years old and fearless, unaware that the headaches she'd been complaining about were the first harbinger of the tumor that would claim her life. Elena turned the pages slowly, reliving their childhood through carefully preserved photographs. Sarah on her bicycle, Sarah at the beach, building an elaborate sandcastle, Sarah and Elena with their parents, a family portrait taken just months before the diagnosis. The last photo showed Sarah in her hospital bed, thin and pale but still smiling, Elena sitting beside her, 14 and terrified but trying so hard to be brave for her little sister. Elena touched the image gently, remembering that day. How Sarah had made her promise not to be sad forever. How she'd broken that promise the moment Sarah had closed her eyes for the final time. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Marcus, Lily asked me to send you this. She couldn't sleep until you saw it. Attached was a photo of another drawing, this one showing a group of stick figures holding hands. A tall woman in a business suit, a man in what appeared to be a janitor's uniform, and a small figure with a yellow head covering. Behind them stood many more figures, adults and children, forming a circle that extended beyond the page's edge. Above them all, the winged Ferrari watched over the scene. The caption, in Lily's careful printing, read, "The Sarah Blackwood Foundation family." Something broke open inside. Elena then, not the shattering grief she'd carried for 20 years, but something gentler, a release, the beginning of healing. With sudden clarity, she knew what she needed to do. She picked up her phone and typed, "Tell Lily her drawing is beautiful. And Marcus, I'm ready to tell Sarah's story." The next morning, Elena arrived at Blackwood Industries wearing not her usual power suit, but a simple blouse and slacks. Her executive team, gathered for the emergency meeting she'd called, exchanged puzzled glances as she entered the conference room. "I've made a decision," she announced without preamble. "Effective immediately, I'm taking a 6-month sabbatical as CEO. Jason will serve as interim while I focus on launching the Sarah Blackwood Foundation." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Jason, her CFO, stared at her in disbelief. "Elena, the Tokyo situation is in capable hands," she finished. "Yours. The company won't collapse without me, contrary to what my ego has believed for the past 15 years. May I ask what prompted this decision?" Her HR director ventured cautiously. Elena paused, considering how much to share with these people who knew only her corporate persona. "Let's just say, I recently gained some perspective on what matters. And right now, what matters is ensuring that families fighting childhood cancer don't have to do it alone." As her team absorbed this revelation, Elena's phone lit up with an incoming call from Marcus. She excused herself to answer it. "Elena," Marcus's voice was tight with emotion. "It's Lily. Her latest scans came back. The treatment is working. The tumor is shrinking." Elena gripped the phone, her knees suddenly weak with relief. "That's Dot. That's wonderful news. She's asking for you," Marcus continued. "Says she needs to tell the Ferrari angel herself." Elena looked back at the conference room, where her executive team was still processing her bombshell announcement. The Tokyo crisis, the quarterly projections, the shareholder concerns, all the things that had consumed her existence for so long seemed suddenly distant, like problems belonging to someone else. "Tell her I'm on my way," Elena said, already gathering her thing. And Marcus? I've just taken a sabbatical from Blackwood. The foundation has my full attention now. There was a moment of silence on the other end. And are you sure about this? Elena thought of Sarah's photo of the promise she'd broken 20 years ago, of Lily's drawing with its circle of figures holding hands, of the unexpected connection she'd found with a janitor who saw her more clearly than anyone had in decades. I've never been more sure of anything, she replied. And for the first time in 20 years, it was the absolute truth. The television studio lights felt unnaturally hot on Elena's face as she sat across from the interview. A respected journalist known for her thoughtful profiles of business. This wasn't the usual financial news spot Elena had done dozens of times before. This was different, personal. Today we're speaking with Elena Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries, who recently announced a 6-month sabbatical to focus on her newest venture, the Sarah Blackwood Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Families, the journalist began. Elena, this is quite a departure from your usual corporate focus. What inspired you to create this foundation? Elena took a deep breath, feeling Marcus's supportive presence just off camera. They had prepared for this moment, rehearsing her answers to ensure she could speak about Sarah without breaking down. But now that the moment had arrived, she found herself setting aside their careful script. The foundation is named after my sister, Sarah, Elena began, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. She died of brain cancer when she was 8 years old. I was 14. The journalist nodded encouragingly, clearly sensing this was not a story Elena had shared before. After Sarah died, our family fractured. My father buried himself in work. My mother retreated into grief, and I decided that I would never feel that helpless again. Elena paused, surprised by her own candor. I built Blackwood Industries on the principle of control. If I controlled enough money, enough power, I could insulate myself from that kind of loss. And did it work? The journalist asked quietly. Elena smiled ruefully. For 20 years, I thought it did. I became the ice queen of the business world. Nothing touched me, but I wasn't really living. What changed? Elena glanced off camera to where Marcus stood, his expression a mix of pride and encouragement. I met a janitor who works in my company, she said. His daughter, Lily, has the same type of cancer that took Sarah. When I learned about their struggle, not just the medical battle, but the financial one, the logistical one, the emotional one, something broke open inside me. I realized that in all my years of accumulating wealth and power, I'd never used it to address the very thing that had driven me. The camera cut to a photo of Lily in her hospital bed, proudly holding up her drawing of the Ferrari with wings. This is Lily Reeves, Elena continued, her voice warming. 8 years old, brilliant artist, absolute fighter. Her father, Marcus, worked 3 jobs to pay for her treatment, including cleaning my office at night. The day I discovered this, I impulsively lent him my Ferrari. The journalist's eyebrows rose in surprise. Your Ferrari? It sounds ridiculous now, Elena acknowledged with a small laugh. But yes, and do you know what he did with it? The screen filled with news footage from that day. The red Ferrari parked outside St. Mary's Children's Hospital, surrounded by excited children in hospital gowns. He filled it with toys and drove it to the hospital, Elena said, her voice catching slightly. Not for himself, but to bring joy to his daughter and every other child fighting cancer. Children who spend most of their days in pain and fear suddenly got to experience wonder. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes bright with unshed tears. That day changed everything. It reminded me of Sarah, not just of her illness, but of her life. Joy, her capacity for wonder even in the darkest times. The interview continued, with Elena outlining the foundation's comprehensive approach to supporting families, covering not just medical expenses, but housing, transportation, childcare, and mental health services. She explained how Marcus had become the foundation's director of family advocacy, bringing his first-hand experience to shape their programs. We're not just writing checks, Elena emphasized. We're creating a community of support. No family fighting childhood cancer should have to do it alone, the way my family did, the way Marcus and Lily almost had to. As the interview concluded, the journalist asked one final question. Elena, your business colleagues have expressed shock at your sabbatical. Some analysts are questioning whether this signals a permanent shift in your priorities. How do you respond to that? Elena considered the question, knowing her answer would be scrutinized by shareholders and board members. For 20 years, I've approached business as a fortress, something to build higher and stronger to protect myself from pain. I've been effective, but incomplete. She leaned forward, her gaze steady. I'm not abandoning Blackwood Industries. I'm bringing my whole self to it for the first time, and I believe that will make me a better leader, not a weaker one. When the cameras stopped rolling, Elena exhaled slowly, the tension draining from her shoulders. Marcus approached, pride evident in his expression. You did it, he said quietly. Sarah would be proud. Elena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. For 20 years, she had carried Sarah as a private wound. Today, she had transformed that wound into a public purpose. Ready to go? Marcus asked. Lily's waiting to hear how it went. They drove to the hospital in comfortable silence, Elena gazing out the window at the city streets. Not in her Ferrari that had been donated to the foundation's first fundraising auction, but in a sensible that could accommodate Lily's wheelchair on the days when treatment left her too weak to walk. At St. Mary's, they found Lily sitting up in bed, surrounded by art supplies and chatting animatedly with another young patient. The change in her over the past past 2 months was remarkable. Though still thin, color had returned to her cheeks and her eyes were bright with energy that had been absent when Elena first met her. "Dad, Elena!" Lily called when she spotted them. "Did you see my new friend Emma? She just got admitted yesterday." I was showing her my drawings. Elena smiled at the little girl beside Lily's bed, younger, perhaps 6, with wide, frightened eyes and a pink knit cap covering her head. "Hello, Emma," Elena said warmly. "Lily is quite the artist, isn't she?" Emma nodded shyly. "She showed me the Ferrari angel. She says you're the angel." Lily grinned, unrepentant. "I told her all about how you're helping families like mine and how your sister was like us." Elena felt the familiar twist in her heart at the mention of Sarah, but it wasn't the sharp pain of before, more like the gentle ache of a healing wound. "That's right," Elena confirmed, sitting on the edge of Lily's bed. "And now the foundation's gonna help Emma's family too." Emma's eyes widened. "Really?" Marcus nodded, crouching to the little girl's level. "Really? We're already talking with your parents about ways we can help." Emma's face lit with the first real smile since her admission. "So my mom doesn't have to quit her job, like she said?" "Not if she doesn't want to," Elena assured her. "The foundation can help with bills so your parents can focus on you, not on money." As Marcus escorted Emma back to her room, Lily turned to Elena with serious eyes. "How did the TV thing go? Did you talk about Sarah?" "I did," Elena said, still marveling at how this child could cut straight to the heart of matters. "It was hard, but good. Like finally letting her out of the box I'd kept her in for so long." Lily nodded sagely. "My dad was like that too, about my mom. He never talked about her after she died, but now he tells me stories all the time." Elena smiled, reminded again of the wisdom that often came with suffering. "Your dad is a very brave man. He says you're brave too," Lily replied matter-of-factly. "He says most rich people just write checks, but you actually show up." The simple observation caught Elena off guard. Before she could respond, Marcus returned, catching the tail end of Lily's comment. "Sharing my daughter's secrets again, I see," he said with mock severity, but his eyes were warm as they met Elena's. "Just repeating what you said," Lily defended, then turned her attention back to her drawing. Lena raised an eyebrow at Marcus. "Do you think I'm brave?" "Among other things," he acknowledged, pulling up a chair beside her. "The interview was extraordinary, by the way. You made Sarah real to everyone watching. You made all these kids real." Elena felt a flush of pleasure at his praise. In the business world, she received recognition daily for her strategic brilliance, her market insights, her ruthless efficiency. But this was a different recognition of her humanity, not just her capability. "I have something to show you both," she said, retrieving her tablet from her bag. The foundation website launched this morning right after the interview aired. She opened the site, revealing a clean, professional design centered around Lily's Ferrari angel drawing, digitally enhanced but maintaining its childlike charm. Below it was a simple tagline: "No family fights alone." "It's perfect," Marcus breathed, genuinely moved. Lily clapped her hands in delight. "My drawing, it's famous now." "That's not all," Elena continued, scrolling down to reveal a counter. "We've already received over 200 applications from families needing support." And, she tapped another section, over $5 million in donations. Marcus stared at the number in disbelief. "5 million? In a few hours?" Elena nodded, a rare smile spreading across her face. "Apparently, the Ice Queen of Blackwood Industries showing emotion on national television made an impression. My board chairman called right after the interview aired. The company's matching all donations, dollar for dollar." "That's incredible," Marcus said, visibly overwhelmed. "It's just the beginning," Elena replied. "The Children's Oncology Conference next week will put us in front of every major pediatric cancer center in the country. Within a year, I want a Sarah Blackwood Foundation family advocate in every children's hospital in America." As she outlined her vision, ambitious, comprehensive, meticulously planned as any corporate strategy, Elena realized that for the first time in 20 years, she was channeling her drive towards something that filled rather than depleted her. Later that evening, as they shared a quiet dinner in the hospital cafeteria while Lily napped, Marcus studied Elena with thoughtful eyes. "What?" she asked, self-conscious under his gaze. "I've changed," he observed. "Since that day with the Ferrari." Elena considered this. "I suppose I have. Are you happier?" The question was direct, genuine. Elena thought of her life before: the pristine penthouse, the boardroom victories, the solitary nights reviewing reports, the carefully maintained distance between herself and anything that might cause pain. "I'm more," she said finally. "More connected, more vulnerable, more alive." She met his gaze. "Yes, I'm happier, even when it hurts." Marcus nodded, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected all along. "That's the secret, I think. Not avoiding the pain, but making sure there's enough joy to balance it." As they talked into the evening, planning foundation initiatives and sharing stories of Sarah and Rachel, Elena realized that Marcus had become more than a colleague, more than the catalyst for her transformation. He had become a friend, perhaps the first real friend she'd had since losing Sarah. And in the quiet space between their words, something else was growing, something neither was ready to name, but both could feel taking root, as persistent and hopeful as the children they were fighting to help. The Children's Oncology Conference transformed from a staid medical meeting into a media event when Elena Blackwood and Marcus Reeves took the stage. Their presentation, CEO and a former janitor standing as equals challenged every convention of the traditionally hierarchical medical establishment. Elena presented the data, the foundation's comprehensive support model, the financial projections, the scalability across hospital systems. Marcus shared the human element, his own family's journey, and the stories of others the foundation had already begun to help. Together, they were magnetic. By the end of their presentation, hospital administrators were lining up to discuss implementing the foundation's advocacy program in their pediatric oncology departments. "That was incredible, Doctor," Reynolds said afterward, clasping Elena's hand. "You've started something revolutionary here." Elena smiled, watching as Marcus was surrounded by oncologists eager to discuss the program. "It's just the beginning," she replied. The conference's success set the tone for the weeks that followed. Elena's sabbatical from Blackwood Industries stretched into its third month, yet she worked harder than ever, crisscrossing the country to meet with hospital boards, potential donors, and families in need. Marcus traveled with her when he could, but his priority remained Lily, whose treatment continued to show promising results. On the days when Elena traveled alone, she found herself missing not just his practical insights, but his steady presence, his quiet humor, the way he could cut through corporate doublespeak with refreshing direct. They spoke daily, sometimes about foundation business, often about Lily's progress, occasionally about the memories they were both learning to carry rather than bury Sarah, Rachel, the losses that had shaped them. It was during one such call that Elena first noticed the strain in Marcus's voice. "Is everything all right?" she asked, pausing her packing for the next day's trip to Boston. There was a hesitation on the other end. "Lily's latest scan showed something concerning," he finally said. "Dr. Marshall says it might be nothing, a shadow, an anomaly in the imaging, but they want to run more tests." Elena's hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of tests? Another round of imaging tomorrow? Possibly a biopsy after that?" The fear in his voice was palpable, even as he tried to hide it. Elena abandoned her suitcase, already mentally rescheduling her meetings. "I'm coming back," she said. "I'll be on the next flight." "Elena, you don't have to. I want to," she interrupted gently. "That's what family does." The word slipped out before she could consider its implications. Family. Somewhere along the way, Marcus and Lily had become that to her, not replacements for what she'd lost, but new connections, just as vital, just as precious. There was a moment of silence, then Marcus's voice, thick with emotion. "Thank you." Elena arrived at St. Mary's the next morning, stepping off the elevator just as Marcus emerged from the imaging department, his face drawn with worry. "Any news?" she asked, falling into step beside him. He shook his head. "They're still analyzing the images. Dr. Marshall will meet with us in an hour." He glanced at her, taking in the casual clothes and minimal makeup, a far cry from the polished CEO who had first handed him Ferrari keys. "You didn't have to cancel Boston. Boston can wait," Elena replied simply. They found Lily in her room, drowsy from the sedation required for the scan, but brightening when she spotted Elena. "You're back," she exclaimed. "Did you bring me any presents?" Elena laughed, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. "As a matter of fact, I did." She produced a small package from her bag, a set of professional-grade colored pencils she'd found in a specialty art store during her last trip. Lily's eyes widened as she opened the box, running her fingers over the vibrant colors. "These are fancy," she breathed. "Only the best for my favorite artist," Elena replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I thought you might use them for your next masterpiece for the foundation." The girl's face clouded slightly. "Dad says I might have to do more treatment." Elena met Marcus's gaze over his daughter's head, reading the pain there. "Well," she said carefully, "if that happens, we'll face it together, just like before." Lily seemed to accept this, already distracted by the new art supplies. As she began testing them on a blank page, Marcus motioned Elena into the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being here, for keeping things normal for her." Elena shook her head. "Don't thank me. This is where I need to be." The hour until Dr. Marshall's arrival seemed to stretch endlessly. Elena found herself pacing the small room, checking emails without absorbing their content, her mind fixed on the scan results. She had faced corporate crises, market crashes, hostile takeovers, but nothing had prepared her for this gnawing fear for a child who wasn't even hers. Dr. Marshall arrived precisely on time, a file tucked under her arm and a carefully neutral expression on her face. She greeted them both, then suggested they speak privately in her office. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here," Marcus replied, his hand protectively on Lily's shoulder. "We don't keep secrets in this family." The doctor hesitated, then nodded. The imaging showed a new area of concern, a small mass distinct from the original tumor site. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus's grip on Lily's shoulder tightened. "What does that mean?" Lily asked, looking from the doctor to her father. "Is the medicine not working?" Dr. Marshall sat on the edge of the bed, addressing Lily directly. "The original tumor is still responding well to treatment. This is something different, possibly unrelated, possibly a complication. We need to do a biopsy to know for sure." "Another surgery?" Marcus asked, his voice strained. "A minor one, yes. Scheduled for tomorrow morning." Elena watched as Lily's face crumpled slightly, then reformed into determined bravery. "Will it hurt?" "You'll be asleep, doctor," Marshall assured her, "and afterward there might be some discomfort, but nothing you haven't handled before." Lily nodded, seeming to draw strength from the doctor's straightforward manner. "Okay, I can do it." The doctor left them with instructions for the pre-surgery preparation. As soon as the door closed, Lily turned to her father. "Dad, are you scared?" Marcus sat beside her, gathering her small body in his arms. "A little," he admitted, "but you know what? You're the bravest person I've ever met, so I'm going to be brave too." Lily nestled against him, then reached for Elena's hand, pulling her into their circle. "Elena's brave too. She's the Ferrari angel." Elena felt tears prick her eyes as she squeezed the child's hand. "That's right. And angels watch over people, remember?" That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Elena and Marcus sat in the small waiting area near her room, cups of mediocre cafeteria coffee growing cold in their hands. "I can't do this again," Marcus said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't lose her too." Elena recognized the fear in his eyes, the same paralyzing terror she'd seen in her father's face as Sarah's condition had deteriorated, the helplessness of a parent facing the unthinkable. You won't," she said fiercely. "We're gonna fight this, whatever it takes." Marcus looked at her, really looked, as if seeing past the confidence she projected to the fear she also carried. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have to be," Elena replied simply, "because the alternative is unacceptable." They sat in silence for a moment, the hospital's night sounds a distant backdrop to their shared vigil. "I never asked you," Marcus said finally. "That day with the Ferrari, why did you really do it?" Elena considered the question, thinking back to that moment in the parking garage, the impulsive decision that had changed everything. I think I was tired of being numb," she said slowly. "For 20 years I'd built walls to keep out pain, but they also kept out everything else. Joy, connection, purpose. When I learned about Lily, those walls started to crack. The Ferrari was my first instinct to reach through." Marcus nodded, understanding. "And now I'm learning to live without the walls," she said softly. "It's terrifying, and it's the only thing that matters." His hand found hers in the dim light, a gentle pressure that conveyed what words could not. They sat that way until morning, neither speaking, both drawing strength from the simple human connection that had become their anchor. The surgery itself was mercifully quick. Lily was wheeled away at 8 a.m., her small face brave despite the fear in her eyes. Elena and Marcus waited together, sometimes talking, mostly silent, each lost in their own thoughts and prayers. When Dr. Marshall finally appeared, her expression was guarded. "The procedure went well," she began. "Lily is in recovery now. We've sent the tissue samples for rush analysis. We should have preliminary results in a few hours," but Marcus pressed, sensing the unspoken concern. The doctor hesitated. "Visually, I'm concerned. The new mass doesn't have the characteristics we'd expect from a treatment response. I don't want to speculate further until we have the pathology report." Those hours were the longest of Elena's life, worse even than the waiting during Sarah's final decline. Then, she had been a child herself, shielded somewhat by her parents' attempts to protect her. Now she was fully present in the fear, in the desperate hope, in the agonizing uncertainty. When Dr. Marshall finally returned, both Elena and Marcus stood, hands still clasped tightly between them. "It's not what we feared," the doctor said, relief evident in her voice. "The mass isn't cancerous. It's an inflammatory response to the treatment chair, but not unheard of. We can adjust her protocol to address it." Elena felt her knees go weak with relief. Beside her, Marcus made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "So she's going to be okay?" he asked, needing the confirmation. Dr. Marshall smiled, the first real smile they'd seen from her. "The prognosis remains very positive. This was a scare, but not a setback." Later, as they sat beside Lily's bed in recovery, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest beneath the hospital blanket, Elena found herself reassessing everything, her life before Marcus and Lily. The foundation's work, the choices that had led her to this hospital room that felt more like home than her penthouse ever had. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "The foundation needs a more permanent structure. A physical center where families can stay during treatment, with all the support services under one roof." Marcus looked up, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "That's ambitious." "I'm an ambitious woman," Elena replied, echoing her words to Dr. Reynolds months ago. "I'm thinking of the property adjacent to St. Mary's, the old medical office building. Blackwood Industries could purchase it. Renovate. You're serious about this?" Marcus said, not a question but a realization. Elena nodded. "Today made me realize how lucky we are to have resources, to have each other. Most families face this alone." She met his gaze. "I don't want to go back to my old life, Marcus. Not completely. The foundation isn't just Sarah's legacy anymore. It's becoming mine." The truth of those words settled between them. A commitment as profound as any she had ever made. And as Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open to find both of them waiting, Elena knew with absolute certainty that the Ferrari she'd impulsively lent had delivered her exactly where she needed to be. The old medical building adjacent to St. Mary's had stood vacant for nearly 5 years, its brick facade weathered, its windows clouded with dust and neglect. Today it hummed with activity construction crews, architects and designers transforming the forgotten structure into what would soon become the Sarah Blackwood Foundation Center. Elena stood on the sidewalk, hard hat in hand, surveying the progress. 6 months had passed since Lily's health scare, 6 months of planning, fundraising, and navigating city permits. Her sabbatical from Blackwood Industries had officially ended 2 months ago, but she had returned as executive chairwoman rather than CEO, allowing her to balance corporate responsibilities with her foundation work. "Impressive," Marcus said, joining her outside. "Hard to believe this was practically condemned last year." Alina smiled, feeling a surge of pride not unlike what she felt when completing a major corporate acquisition, only better, cleaner, more meaningful. The construction team says we're ahead of schedule, she replied. We should be able to welcome our first families by Christmas. Marcus nodded, his eyes tracking the workers hauling materials through the main entrance. Lily's been designing welcome cards for the kids. She wants each family to feel special when they arrive. At the mention of Lily, Elena's smile widened. The girl had completed her treatment protocol 3 weeks ago, her latest scan showing no evidence of disease, though she would need regular monitoring for years to come. Her doctors were cautiously using the word remission. How is she feeling today? Elena asked. Lily's energy still fluctuated, the aftermath of months of aggressive treatment. Good day, Marcus confirmed. She's with the art therapist now, working on designs for the center's children's lounge. They had asked Lily to help design several spaces in the new center, valuing her unique perspective as both a patient and an artist. Her Ferrari Angel logo had become recognized nationally, appearing on Foundation Materials fundraising events, and even a limited edition t-shirt line that had raised over $2 million. We should join them, Elena suggested. I need to approve the final color scheme for the family apartments. As they turned to head back into the hospital where Lily waited, a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb. Elena recognized it instantly, one of the Blackwood Industries executive fleet. The back door opened and Jason Miller, her former CFO and current CEO, emerged. Elena, he called, straightening his tie as he approached. We need to talk. Elena tensed. Since stepping back from daily operations, her relationship with Jason had been professional but strained. He had expected to inherit her ruthless business approach along with her title and was continually surprised by her new emphasis on corporate responsibility initiatives. Jason, she greeted him. This is unexpected. I've been trying to reach you all morning, he replied, glancing dismissively at Marcus. The Morgan acquisition is falling apart. Their CEO is demanding concessions we can't afford. 6 months ago, this would have triggered Elena's crisis response emergency board meetings, late-night strategy sessions, perhaps a well-placed threat or two. Now she felt oddly detached from the urgency. Let's discuss this later at the office, she said calmly. I have a meeting about the center's design that's about to start. Jason's expression tightened. Elena, this is a $100 million deal. Surely your charity project can wait. Marcus stiffened beside her, but Elena placed a subtle hand on his arm. This was her battle. The foundation isn't a charity project, Jason. It's a vital healthcare initiative, she corrected him, her voice measured but firm. And no, it can't wait. Children with cancer can't put their lives on hold for corporate negotiation. The board is concerned, Jason pressed. Your priorities seem increasingly divided. Elena met his gaze steadily. My priorities have never been clearer. Schedule a call with Morgan's CEO for this evening. I'll handle it then. Single quotes. Jason hesitated, clearly wanting to push further but recognizing the steel beneath her calm exterior, the same quality that had made her a formidable CEO. 7 o'clock, he finally agreed, turning back toward his car. Don't be late. As the town car pulled away, Marcus whistled softly. He doesn't approve of me. Elena shrugged. Jason doesn't approve of anything that can't be measured in quarterly profits. She turned to face him fully. He's right about one thing, though. My priorities have changed. Their eyes met, a moment of silent understanding passing between them. Over the months of working together, sharing fears during Lily's treatment, celebrating her progress and building the foundation's future, their relationship had evolved beyond professional collaboration, beyond friendship even. Neither had put words to it yet, both hesitant for their own reasons. Elena wary of vulnerability after decades of emotional isolation. Marcus protective of Lily and still honoring Rachel's memory. Come on, Elena said, breaking the moment. Lily will be wondering where we are. They found her in the hospital's activity room, surrounded by fabric swatches and paint samples, her bald head now covered with a soft fuzz of new hair. The art therapist sat beside her, helping organize the materials spread across the table. Dad, Elena, Lily called, waving them over excitedly. Come see what I picked for the kids' playroom. As they joined her at the table, Lily proudly displayed her selections, bright, hopeful colors that managed to be cheerful without the institutional feel of typical hospital spaces. I was thinking about the Ferrari, she explained seriously, pointing to a vibrant red fabric swatch. See how seeing it made everyone so happy that day. I want the center to feel like that every day. Elena's throat tightened with emotion. That impulsive moment with her car keys had rippled outward in ways she could never have imagined, touching lives, creating connection, building toward this, a sanctuary for families fighting the battle she had once lost. It's perfect, she assured Lily. The Ferrari red will remind everyone that joy is still possible, even on the hardest days. Later, after finalizing the design plans and seeing Lily off to her physical therapy session, Elena and Marcus found themselves alone in the hospital cafeteria, sharing a late lunch. You never told me how you managed to afford all those toys that day, Elena said, the question having lingered in the back of her mind for months. The ones you filled the Ferrari with. Marcus looked up from his sandwich, surprised by the sudden change in topic. I sold my wedding ring, he admitted quietly. Elena stared at him, stunned. Marcus ... forestalling quotes. He shook his head, forestalling her response. It was sitting in my dresser drawer. Rachel would have wanted it used for something meaningful. And seeing Lily's face when those kids surrounded your car ... single quotes. He smiled at the memory. It was worth it. Elena reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. You're the most remarkable man I've ever known, she said softly. The moment was interrupted by Elena's phone buzzing with an incoming call. The foundation's legal team with questions about the center's insurance policies. She took the call, Marcus watched her, marveling at how effortlessly she switched between compassionate friend and efficient executive. When she hung up, he asked, will you really be able to save the Morgan acquisition? Elena smiled, a hint of her former corporate sharpness glinting through. Of course, I'll remind their CEO that while Blackwood Industries can survive without this deal, his company's stock will plummet when news of the failed negotiation hits the market. Ruthless, Marcus observed, but with admiration rather than judgment. Strategic, Elena corrected, and necessary. The acquisition includes a pharmaceutical division developing promising pediatric cancer treatments. I won't let that slip away. Marcus shook his head in wonder. You've found a way to merge your worlds. I'm trying, she acknowledged. It's not always easy. Jason and the board still see the foundation as a distraction from real business. They don't understand that this is the most important work I've ever done. And Blackwood Industries? Is it still important to you? Elena considered the question carefully. Yes, but differently now. Before it was a fortress I built to protect myself. Now it's a tool I can use to create change. She met his gaze. The foundation has taught me that wealth and power are only valuable if they serve something greater than themselves. Marcus nodded, understanding. Lily taught me something similar. After Rachel died, I was just surviving, going through the motion. Then Lily got sick, and suddenly surviving wasn't enough. I had to find purpose in the pain. Quite a pair, aren't? Elena said with a soft laugh. Both transformed by circumstances we never would have chosen. Their eyes met across the table, the connection between them almost tangible. Marcus opened his mouth as if to say something more, then hesitated, glancing at his watch. I should check on Lily, he said, rising from the table. Her therapy session should be ending soon. Elena nodded, gathering her things. And I need to prepare for the Morgan call. Dinner tomorrow night, she asked, to celebrate the center's progress? I'd like that, Marcus replied. Lily's staying with my sister for the weekend, part of our new normal life plan. Just the two of us. Then, Elena said, a question in her voice. Marcus held her gaze. Just the two of us. As they parted ways in the hospital corridor, Elena felt a flutter of anticipation mixed with nervousness, motions she hadn't experienced in decades. Not since she was a teenager, before Sarah's illness had changed everything. At 46, she found herself feeling strangely young, as if the layers of corporate armor were peeling away, revealing the person she might have become without the weight of grief and ambition. That evening, as she successfully negotiated the Morgan acquisition from her penthouse office, Elena found herself glancing repeatedly at Lily's Ferrari angel drawing now framed on her desk. The whimsical image of a luxury sports car with wings had become her touchstone, a reminder of how a single act of kindness had set her on an unexpected path to healing, not just for the families the foundation served, but for herself. The Ferrari that had once symbolized her success now represented something far more valuable. The journey of remembering what truly mattered. Elena stood in front of her closet, experiencing an unfamiliar sensation, indecision. Rows of designer suits, dresses, and accessories stretched before her, a carefully curated armor she'd worn throughout her corporate ascent. Yet nothing seemed right for tonight's dinner with Marcus. She pushed past the power suits and formal evening wear, searching for something that reflected who she was becoming rather than who she'd been. At the back of her closet, she found it, a simple blue dress she'd purchased on impulse months ago but never worn. Not Elena Blackwood, CEO, just Elena. As her driver navigated through the evening traffic, Elena found herself absurdly nervous. She had negotiated billion-dollar deals, faced hostile boards, and delivered keynote speeches to thousands without a flutter of anxiety. Yet the prospect of dinner alone with Marcus, deliberately removed from foundation business, left her palms damp and her heart racing. The restaurant was her choice, not the exclusive chef's table at Lumiere where she typically entertained business associates, but a small Italian place Marcus had once mentioned in passing. Unpretentious, warm, with checked tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. The kind of place where conversation flowed naturally and laughter wasn't constrained by corporate protocol. Marcus was already waiting when she arrived, standing as she approached the table. He wore a crisp, button-down shirt she hadn't seen before, and his usual jeans had been replaced by slacks. His hair, typically cropped close for practicality, had grown out slightly, softening the angles of his face. "You look beautiful," he said simply, the directness that she had come to appreciate evident in his gaze. Elena felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself," as they settled into their seats. The initial awkwardness of the transition from colleagues to something more dissipated in the warmth of the restaurant's atmosphere. They ordered wine, then appetizers, the conversation flowing easily around topics they rarely had time to explore, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the small details that formed the texture of their lives. "I've been meaning to ask," Elena said as they shared a plate of calamari, "why janitorial work? With your intelligence and work ethic, you could have done anything." Marcus considered the question, taking a sip of his wine. "After Rachel and the baby died, I was lost. I couldn't focus on anything complex. Cleaning was straightforward, physical. It let me move without having to think." He offered a rueful smile. "And the night shift meant I could be with Lily during the day." Elena nodded, understanding the need to find control in a world turned chaotic by loss. "I threw myself into work after Sarah died. If I was exhausted enough, I didn't have to feel the emptiness." "Now?" Marcus asked, his eyes steady on hers. "Now I'm learning that emptiness isn't the end of the story, she replied softly. It can also be a space where new things grow. The conversation deepened as dinner arrived, moving from shared experiences of grief to hopes for the future, the foundation's expansion, Lily's recovery, the lives they might touch through their work together. They found themselves laughing more than either had expected, discovering a lightness between them that had always been overshadowed by the seriousness of their shared mission. Tell me something no one at Blackwood Industries knows about you, Marcus challenged as they lingered over dessert. Elena thought for a moment, then smiled. I can't drive a manual transmission. What? Marcus looked genuinely shocked. But your Ferrari is automatic, she finished with a laugh. I've owned 3 different Ferrari models over the years and never learned to drive stick. It was always on my someday list. The great Elena Blackwood, undone by a clutch pedal, Marcus teased. That might damage your corporate warrior image. My corporate warrior image has already undergone quite the transformation, Elena replied, thinking of the television interview where she'd spoken openly about Sarah. I'm learning there's freedom in letting people see the real you. I like the real you, Marcus said quietly. Very much. The simple statement hung between them, honest and unadorned. Elena felt something shift in her chest, the last protective barrier around her heart easing open. I like the real you too, she replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. After dinner, they walked together through the nearby park, the city lights glimmering against the evening sky. Their hands remained linked, a connection neither seemed willing to break. Lily asked me something interesting yesterday, Marcus said as they followed the winding path. She wanted to know if we were in love. Elena's step faltered slightly. What did you tell her? He turned to face her, his expression open and unguarded. I told her that adults sometimes take a long time to figure out what children see right away. Elena felt her heart beat faster. And what does Lily see? She sees 2 people who make each other better, Marcus answered simply. 2 people who found each other when they needed it most. They had stopped walking, standing now beneath the gentle glow of a park lamp. Around them, the world continued its pace joggers on evening runs, couples walking dogs, the distant sound of traffic. But in this moment, it was just the 2 of them, poised on the edge of something new. I haven't let myself feel this way in a very long time, Elena admitted, the words difficult but necessary. I built my life around never being vulnerable again. I know, Marcus said gently. Me too. After Rachel, I couldn't imagine opening myself to that kind of potential loss again. He reached up, his fingers lightly brushing her cheek. But then you handed me your Ferrari keys, and everything started to change. Elena laughed softly. Who would have thought a car could lead to this? Not just any car, Marcus corrected. A symbol of everything you'd achieved, everything you valued. You trusted me with it. That meant something. And you used it to bring joy to children who desperately needed it, Elena replied. That meant everything. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then, with a naturalness that belied their complicated journey to this point, Marcus leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, questioning at first, then deepening as Elena responded, her arms sliding around his shoulders. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Elena rested her forehead against his. What now? She whispered. Now, Marcus said, smiling. We figure it out together, day by day. The next morning found Elena at her desk at Blackwood Industries, reviewing quarterly projections with a clarity and focus that had, if anything, sharpened since her transformation began. She was midway through a complex financial analysis when her assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Send him in, Elena said, already knowing who it would be. Marcus entered, carrying a small gift bag. I hope I'm not interrupting anything critical, he said, looking around the executive office that still intimidated him slightly despite everything they'd shared. Nothing that can't wait, Elena assured him, rising to greet him with a kiss that felt both new and somehow familiar, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. What brings you here? 2 things, Marcus replied. First, Lily wants to know if you'll join us for movie night this weekend. He handed her the gift bag. And second, this is for you. Elena opened the bag to find a small, elegantly crafted model of a Ferrari identical to the one she'd lent Marcus that day, but with tiny angel wings attached to its sides. Lily helped design it, Marcus explained. We had it custom made. Elena held the small sculpture in her palm, emotion welling up inside her. It's perfect, she said softly. I thought you might keep it here, Marcus suggested, gesturing to her desk, a reminder of how this all began. As Elena placed the winged Ferrari next to her computer, her phone rang. Reynolds from St. Mary's, calling with news about the Foundation Center's construction schedule. Their lives continued to intertwine around the work that had brought them together, the mission that had become their shared purpose. Later that afternoon, Elena found herself standing in front of the Foundation Center construction site again, this time with Lily beside her, watching as workers installed the large sign above the entrance, the Sarah Blackwood Foundation Center with the Ferrari Angel logo prominently displayed. Do you think Sarah would like it? Lily asked, her hands slipping into Elena's. Elena looked down at the girl who had, against all odds, become a central part of her life, the daughter of the man she was falling in love with, the inspiration for a mission that had rewritten her priorities, the artist whose simple drawing had captured exactly what they were trying to build, hope with wings. I think she would love it, Elena replied, squeezing Lily's hand. And I think she would love you. Lily nodded, satisfied with this answer. Dad says, sometimes the best things in life come from the worst thing. Like how losing my mom was the worst, but then I got sick, which was also the worst. But then we met you, which is the best. Elena marveled at the child's ability to distill complex emotional truths to their essence. Your dad is a very wise man. He says you're the smartest person he knows, Lily confided. And the prettiest. Elena laughed, a blush warming her cheeks. Is that so? Yep. And he says the Ferrari was the best mistake he ever made. Steak? Elena asked, puzzled. Lily nodded solemnly. He didn't mean to use it to bring toys to the hospital. He was just going to drive it to work and back. But then he saw it in the parking lot that morning and thought about how all the kids at the hospital never get to see cool things or have fun days. And he decided to change his plan. Elena had never known this detail, that the act that had so moved her, that had catalyzed her own transformation, had been a spontaneous decision on Marcus's part. Somehow, knowing it made the moment even more precious, a testament to his character rather than a calculated gesture. As they stood watching the foundation center take shape, a physical manifestation of how one small act of kindness could grow into something that would help hundreds of families, Aslana felt a sense of rightness settle over her. For 20 years, she had built her empire on the premise that success meant never being vulnerable again. Now she understood that true strength came from opening herself to connection, to possibility, to love. The Ferrari that had once been merely a status symbol had become something else entirely, a vehicle that had carried her back to herself. Winter settled over the city, dusting the Sarah Blackwood Foundation Center with snow that gleamed in the December sunlight. The once-abandoned building had been transformed, its brick facade restored, windows gleaming, interior spaces filled with warmth and purpose. Today was the official opening ceremony, and despite the cold, a sizable crowd had gathered in the plaza outside. Elena stood behind a small podium, surveying the faces before her hospital staff, foundation employees, donor representatives, families already enrolled in the program, and members of the press. Beside her stood Marcus, steady as always, and Lily, bundled in a bright red coat that matched the Ferrari angel banners hanging from the building's entrance. 6 months ago, this building was empty, Elena began, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Today it stands as a promise that no family facing childhood cancer will have to face it alone. As she continued her prepared remarks, Elena found her gaze drawn repeatedly to a particular section of the audience, her executive team from Blackwood Industries, including Jason, whose initial skepticism had gradually given way to grudging respect as the foundation's impact grew and positive publicity reflected well on the company's image. I'd like to invite Lily Reeves to the podium, Elena said, concluding her speech. The artist whose vision became our symbol and whose courage inspired us all. Lily stepped forward. No longer the frail child Elena had first met in the hospital. Her hair had grown back in soft curls, and though still thin, her face glowed with health and excitement. She looked out at the crowd without a trace of shyness. When I was really sick, Lily said, her clear voice carrying surprisingly well, a red Ferrari filled with toys came to the hospital. It made all the kids forget about being sick for a little while. She pointed to the large Ferrari angel logo above the entrance. That's why our sign has a Ferrari with wings, because sometimes angels don't look like what you expect. Sometimes they drive really cool cars. Laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by applause as Lily produced an oversized pair of scissors, and with Elena and Marcus's help, cut the ceremonial ribbons stretched across the center's entrance. As the crowd moved inside for tours of the facility, Elena felt a hand on her arm. She turned to find Jason, an unreadable expression on his face. Impressive, he said, nodding toward the building. The board is pleased with the positive publicity. Is that all they're pleased with? Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. Jason had the grace to look slightly abashed. They've noticed the foundation's work has actually strengthened several of our healthcare partnerships. The Morgan Acquisitions Pharmaceutical Division is particularly interested in collaborating on pediatric research. Imagine that, Elena replied with the ghost of her old corporate smile. Doing good can also be good business. As Jason moved away to join the tour, Marcus approached, slipping his arm around her waist in a gesture that still felt new but increasingly natural. Corporate politics? He asked. Just Jason admitting I might have been right all along, Elena said with a wry smile. How are our first families settling in? The center had quietly welcomed 3 families the previous week, a soft opening to ensure all systems were working properly before the official launch. Each family had a child in treatment at St. Mary's and had been living in difficult circumstances, one commuting 3 hours each way, another crowded into a relative's small apartment, the third facing imminent eviction due to medical bills. They're doing well, Marcus replied. Peterson family cried when they saw their apartment. Miss Garcia keeps saying she can't believe she can walk to her son's appointments now. And the Williams family, their other children are already making friends in the activity center. Elena nodded, satisfaction warming her despite the winter chill. The center housed 16 family apartments along with communal spaces, counseling offices, a business center where parents could work remotely, and dedicated areas for children of all ages. Everything they had envisioned during those early planning sessions had come to life, improved by input from the families themselves. Where's Lily? Elena asked, noticing the girl's absence. Leading her own tour, Marcus said with a chuckle. She's showing some of the new kids the art room she helped design. She's quite the ambassador. They followed the crowds inside, watching as visitors explored the facility that had consumed so much of their energy and focus over the past month. The main lobby featured a wall-sized mural of the Ferrari Angela Professional, artist's rendering of Lily's original drawing surrounded by photographs of smiling children and families. Beneath it, an inscription read, "In memory of Sarah Blackwood, and in honor of all children fighting cancer." Elena paused before the mural, reaching for Marcus's hand. "I wish Sarah could see this," she said softly. "I think she can," he replied, squeezing her fingers gently. They continued through the center, stopping occasionally to speak with visitors or address questions from the press. Elena found herself repeatedly explaining the foundation's unique, model comprehensive support that addressed not just medical needs, but the entire ecosystem of care required when a child was seriously ill. "The idea came from personal experience," she told a reporter from the national news, "both mine and Marcus's. We understood that treating the disease isn't enough if families are falling apart from financial stress, logistical challenges, or lack of emotional support. And your relationship?" the reporter asked, glancing between them with undisguised curiosity. "The CEO and the janitor, it's quite the story." Elena felt Marcus tense slightly beside her. Though their relationship had evolved naturally among those who knew them well, they had not yet addressed it publicly. "Sometimes," Elena said carefully, "the most valuable perspectives come from unexpected places. Marcus saw needs I might have overlooked, and together we've created something neither of us could have built alone." It was a diplomatic answer, neither confirming nor denying the personal dimension of their connection. But the gentle way she looked at Marcus as she spoke conveyed what words did not. Later, as the formal ceremonies concluded and the crowd thinned, Elena found herself drawn to one of the family apartments where the Garcia family was settling in. 8-year-old Miguel, bald from his recent round of chemotherapy, was sitting by the window that overlooked the hospital next door. "What do you think of your new home?" Elena asked, sitting beside him. "It's nice," he said simply. "My mom doesn't have to sleep in a chair anymore." Elena followed his gaze to St. Mary's, where they had first met during one of her visits with Lily. "Are you scared about tomorrow's treatment?" she asked gently. Miguel shrugged, a gesture too old for his young shoulders. "A little, but Lily says it gets easier. And now I have friends who understand," his words reminded Elena powerfully of Sarah in those final months. The isolation she had felt as friends gradually stopped visiting, unsure how to act around a dying child. The foundation couldn't change the reality of cancer, but it could change how families experienced it, surrounded by support rather than alone in their fear. "You're very brave," Elena told him, "just like my sister was." As evening fell, the center grew quiet. Visitors departed, the press packed their equipment, and only the resident families and staff remained. Elena found herself in the rooftop garden, a space designed for reflection, with comfortable seating areas and heat lamps to make it usable even in winter. Marcus joined her there, 2 cups of hot chocolate in hand. "Lily's having a sleepover with Emma in the teen lounge," she said, referring to the girl they had met months ago at the hospital. "All the kids are watching a movie with the activities coordinator." Elena accepted the warm mug gratefully. "So we have the garden to ourselves?" "It appears so," Marcus replied, settling beside her on a bench overlooking the city lights. They sat in comfortable silence, kind that comes when 2 people have moved beyond the need to fill every moment with words. Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from that first moment in the Blackwood Industries corridor to this, a partnership that had grown to encompass work, purpose, and love. "I've been thinking," Marcus said finally, his voice thoughtful in the quiet evening, "about the future." Elena turned to him, reading the seriousness in his expression. "What about it? Lily and I have been living in that apartment since Rachel died. It was all I could afford then, and it's been home. But now, now," Elena prompted when he hesitated. "Now it feels like we're ready for a change, a new home, for a new chapter." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "With you, if that's what you want to." Elena's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, not ostentatious like one might expect for someone of her wealth, but thoughtfully chosen, with a design that echoed the wings of their Ferrari Angel logo. "Marcus," she breathed, momentarily at a loss for words, a rare occurrence for the woman once known for her commanding boardroom presence. "I know it's fast," he said quickly, "and complicated. There's Lily to consider, and our work and our very different lives. But I've learned that when you find something real, you don't wait, you build around it." Elena looked at the man before her, the janitor who had shown more integrity, compassion, and wisdom than any of the powerful executives she had known. It's the man who had helped her rediscover her heart when she had thought it permanently walled away. "Yes," she said simply, the word carrying all the certain felt. "Yes to building something new together." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, Elena thought of all the symbols that had marked their journey, the Ferrari that had started it all, the angel wings Lily had added, the foundation that had grown from a moment of impulsive generosity. Full circle, she thought, looking out at St. Mary's Hospital where it had all begun, from a moment of connection connection to a lifetime of purpose. Behind them, the door to the garden opened and Lily appeared in her pajamas, a knowing smile on her face. "Did you ask her?" she demanded, looking at her father expectantly. Marcus laughed, pulling his daughter into their embrace. "I did, and she said yes." Lily's face lit with triumph. "I told you she would. The Ferrari angel has to stay with us forever." As the three of them huddled together in the winter night, Elena realized that the most valuable thing she owned had never been her car, her company, or her considerable fortune. It was this: the capacity to love and be loved, to find meaning in connection, to transform pain into purpose. The Ferrari had been just a key, unlocking a door she had kept closed for too long. 1 year later, the grounds of the Sarah Blackwood Foundation Center were transformed for a celebration. White chairs lined the rooftop garden, now lush with summer blooms. An archway of flowers stood at the far end, framing the spectacular view of the city. Soft music drifted through the air as guests found their seats, a curious mix of corporate executives, medical professionals, foundation staff, and families whose lives had been touched by childhood cancer. In a small room inside the center, Elena stood before a mirror, smoothing the simple white dress she had chosen for the occasion. No designer label, no corporate power statement, just a beautiful dress for a day she had never imagined would come. "Nervous?" Dr. Reynolds asked, adjusting the small bouquet of wildflowers in Elena's hand. "Surprisingly, no," Elena replied. And it was true. After decades of armoring herself against vulnerability, she had expected to feel exposed, uncertain. Instead, she felt only a deep, quiet certainty. Shh. A knock at the door was followed by Lily's entrance, radiant in a pale blue dress, her hair now grown into a stylish pixie cut. At 9 years old, she carried herself with the confidence of a child who had faced the worst and emerged stronger. Her latest scan showed 18 months cancer-free. Not a guarantee, but a milestone worth celebrating. "Dad's freaking out," she announced with the blunt honesty that had endeared her to Elena from the beginning. "He keeps checking his pocket for the rings every 2 minutes. Elena laughed, the sound light and free. "That sounds like him. Always making sure everything's perfect." "He says you're already perfect," Lily replied, flopping onto a nearby chair. "He told me last night that lending him your Ferrari was the best thing that ever happened." "He's right about that," Elena said, meeting Dr. Reynolds' amused glance in the mirror, "although I think finding you both was the real miracle." A second knock heralded an unexpected visitor, Jason, looking somewhat uncomfortable in his role as Elena's chosen escort down the aisle. "It's time," he said, his typical corporate brusqueness softened for the occasion. Everyone seated. Elena took a final look in the mirror. At 47, she saw the lines of experience on her face, the silver strands beginning to appear in her dark hair. She looked nothing like the bride she might have imagined in her youth, before Sarah's illness had altered the course of her life, yet she had never felt more beautiful, more complete. "Let's not keep them waiting," she said, taking Jason's offered arm. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. As Elena walked toward the flower-adorned archway where Marcus and Lily waited, she caught glimpses of the faces watching her passage: Emma, now in remission, sitting with Miguel, whose treatment was progressing well; the Peterson family, whose son had completed therapy 2 months ago; Dr. Marshall, whose expertise had saved Lily's life; and dozens of others whose lives had intertwined with theirs through the foundation. In the front row sat her executive team from Blackwood Industries, still adjusting to the changes she had instituted upon her full return, more family-friendly policies, a significant portion of profits directed to healthcare initiatives, and a corporate culture that valued purpose alongside profit. Some had resisted at first, but the results improved employee satisfaction. Positive press and strengthened partnerships with healthcare organizations had gradually won them over. When she reached Marcus, his eyes shining with a joy that matched her own, Elena felt the final pieces of her long journey click into place. The vows they exchanged were personal, honest, acknowledging the unlikely path that had brought them together. "I gave you my keys," Elena said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. "You gave me back my heart. You saw me when I was invisible," Marcus replied, his hands warm around hers. "You helped me build a life I never thought possible." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, it was Lily who cheered the loudest, bouncing on her toes beside them, her face alight with happiness. The reception that followed was unlike any event Elena had previously hosted: warm, informal, filled with laughter and genuine connection. Children from the foundation played between the tables, their health in various stages of recovery, but their spirits uniformly bright. As dusk fell, Elena found herself standing at the edge of the garden, looking out at St. Mary's Hospital where it had all begun. Marcus joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked simply. "Beyond anything I could have imagined," she replied, leaning into his embrace. They watched as Lily organized a group of children for a game, her natural leadership evident in the way they listened to her instructions. In the years since the center's opening, she had become something of a mascot for the foundation, her story and her artwork inspiring donors and comforting newly diagnosed children. "She wants to be a doctor now," Marcus said, following Elena's gaze. "Pediatric oncology," Dr. Marshall has been mentoring her. Single quotes. Elena smiled, not surprised. She'll be brilliant. She already understands what most medical students never grasp, that healing is about more than medicine. As the evening progressed, Elena was approached by a young journalist who had been invited to cover the event for a feature on the foundation's one-year impact report. Mrs. Blackwood Reeves, the journal, your foundation has helped over 200 families in its first year, with centers now opening in 3 additional cities. What's next? Elena considered the question, looking around at what they had built. We're developing a research initiative, she said, partnering with Blackwood Industries' pharmaceutical division to accelerate treatments for pediatric cancers that have seen little progress in decades. And personally, the journalist pressed, you've gone from being known as the ice queen of corporate America to becoming a leading advocate for families fighting childhood cancer. How do you reconcile these two versions of yourself? It was a question Elena had considered deeply over the past year. They were never really separate versions, she replied thoughtfully. The drive, the strategic thinking, the attention to detail, those qualities serve me in both worlds. The difference is purpose, finding something worth building that isn't just about protection or accumulation. The journalist nodded, making notes. And the Ferrari Angel logo? There are rumors about its origin. Elena smiled, glancing toward Lily, who was now showing her wedding bouquet to a small girl in a wheelchair. Some stories are personal, she said simply, but I will tell you this, sometimes the most profound journeys begin with a single, impulsive act of kindness. As the reception wound down and guests began to depart, Elena found herself drawn to the foundation's lobby, where the Ferrari Angel mural still watched over all who entered. She stood before it, thinking of Sarah, how different her sister's journey might have been with this kind of support, how proud she would be of what her memory had inspired. There you are, Marcus said, finding her lost in thought. Lily's finally crashed. One of the nurses is going to stay with her tonight in our apartment here so we can leave for our honeymoon in the morning. Elena nodded, her fingers lightly tracing the outline of the painted Ferrari. I was just thinking about the day we met, how annoyed I was that you stopped me from getting into my car. Marcus chuckled. I was terrified you were going to have me arrested. Instead, I gave you my Ferrari and I brought it back with a trunk full of toys and a car full of happy kids. He finished, the story now a treasured part of their shared history. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Elena asked, gesturing to the building around them, to the wedding band now gleaming on her finger. Marcus shook his head, drawing her close. Never, but I'm grateful every day that we did. They stood together before the mural, the painted wings of the Ferrari spreading protectively over the images of smiling children, some who had won their battles, some who had lost, all who had found community and support through the foundation born of a single spontaneous act. The next morning, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Elena found Lily waiting for them in the center's driveway. Beside her stood Dr. Reynolds and several foundation staff members, all wearing suspiciously innocent expressions. What's going on? Elena asked, eyeing them curiously. Lily's grin widened as she pointed to the curb where a vehicle sat covered by a large tarp. We have a present for you. At a nod from Marcus, who was clearly in on the surprise, Lily pulled the tarp away to reveal a gleaming red Ferrari, identical to the one Elena had lent Marcus that fateful day, but with one significant modification. Small, perfectly crafted angel wings had been professionally attached to the sides, matching Lily's original drawing. We all pitched in, Doctor, Reynolds explained, clearly enjoying Elena's stunned expression. The foundation board, the hospital staff, even some of our donor family. Lily designed the wings, Marcus added, his arms slipping around Elena's waist. They're removable, of course, for when you want to be incognito. But we thought, it's perfect, Elena interrupted, emotion making her voice thick. She knelt to Lily's level, pulling her into a tight hug. Absolutely perfect. As they drove away from the center, the Ferrari's engine purring beneath them and its wings catching the morning light, Elena reached for Marcus's hand across the console. Where to first? He asked. The road opened before them. Elena looked in the rearview mirror at the foundation center growing smaller behind them, at the life they had built from unexpected beginning. Anywhere, she said, smiling. The journey's what matters. And as the Ferrari carried them forward, its symbolic wings no longer just a drawing, but a tangible reminder of transformation, Elena understood that the true luxury in life had never been about cars or corporate power. It had been about connection, purpose, and the courage to open oneself to possibility. The greatest journey hadn't been from CEO to philanthropist, or from strangers to family. It had been from isolation to belonging, from guarding her heart to setting it free, all because one day she'd handed her Ferrari keys to a janitor and he had shown her what it truly meant to soar.